to the Writing in Your Jammies podcast. I'm your host, Jeannie Hall, and I'm pursuing my dream of writing in my jammies for a living. By discussing some of the spiritual teachings that have put me on the road to success, I hope to inspire you to feel better, live happier, and pursue your own dreams. Join me. Hi, and welcome to the Writing in Your Jammies podcast. This is podcast 9, Writing Best Practices. So today I'm going to talk about writing in general. This is the first time I've actually talked about writing, even though this is the Writing in Your Jammies podcast. I think it's time that I actually talk about writing as a subject. And I talk about that as someone who not only who taught English for 5 years. I have an English degree, and I was an English teacher for 5 years at the secondary level, but also as a writer and author of 6 books, one of which is traditionally published with the Wild Rose Press called Violation of Faith, which is a romantic thriller. I also have a romantic thriller in the form of a Christmas novella called A Midnight Clear, and then I have my 4 personal development self-help books that are all nonfiction. They're all available on Amazon, all 6 books, and my nonfiction series is called Writing in My Jammies, and all of those are to help you with personal development practices like the law of attraction and applying it to your life. So all the writing I've done has been all over the place, basically. I've done fiction, I've done nonfiction. I was surprised when I first started doing nonfiction. Last year was the first year that I ever pursued that in any kind of serious manner. I was doing a blog before I started the Writing in Your Jammies blog. I had one called Jeannie Hall Suspense, and I enjoy doing that. It's kind of a whole different thing, writing blogs and writing the show notes for a podcast and doing kind of the social media type posts and things like that is all considered writing, of course, and it's all very important to know who you're writing to and what you're writing for. And for my personal belief in how to be a successful writer is that you enjoy what you're doing. Don't let anyone tell you what's right or wrong with your method. A lot of people will, and I think it's all well-meaning, that they're trying to give you advice. Writers, especially those who call themselves aspiring writers or aspiring authors, will come to those who are published and say, what is your secret? How did you get this many books done? How did you become whatever success level they are, whether they're best-selling authors that they're going to and talking to, or whether it's just someone who's become published for the first time or whatever, someone who's at a more advanced level, they'll go to them and ask, how did you do this? And the thing is, I've been in that position, of course, myself. And the thing is, I think it's really important to listen to everyone and take their advice under advisement, but I also think it's important to do what works for you. And what may work for you may not be what the main advice is. Many, many, many authors have told me or have given general advice that I've read. Things like, keep writing no matter what. It doesn't matter if you have a headache, doesn't matter if you feel bad, doesn't matter if you're sick, doesn't matter if you don't want to, doesn't matter if you're tired. Sit your butt in the chair, put your hands on the keyboard and write. And that works for some people. It works for a lot of people. And I know what their intention is to set up a good habit, a steady, consistent habit of writing. And setting up a consistent habit and being disciplined about it is a good thing, can be very helpful. But I think if you come at it from, being a law of attraction enthusiast, and I'm a believer in that, I think anytime you come at a subject or a desire of yours from a place of force and willing it to happen by force and by pushing yourself, I don't think that's the best way, personally, to make things happen. I'm the kind of writer that when I'm inspired to write, I can sit and write all day, all night, skip bathroom breaks, skip meals, not drink anything, everything. Whenever I'm really inspired and in the moment. It can be hours and even days, where I can do something like that if I don't have any other interruptions. But I'm also the kind of writer that if something is not working for me and I sit there and I try to push myself into writing something when I don't feel like it's working, then all that ends up happening is I write what I consider crap. And I end up being very frustrated with the whole process, and I'm not enjoying it anymore. So I think there's different levels to that. You can write something that you feel frustrated with or aren't completely satisfied with, but feel happy while you're writing. Or you can be forcing yourself to do something for several days in a row and keep forcing and pushing because that's what you've been told you have to do to make it work, and end up, getting frustrated with the whole thing and just saying, screw it, I don't want to mess with this anymore. So what I want to do is make sure that I'm not giving the kind of advice that makes you fall into a situation where you're not loving what you love to do anymore. And if writing is what you love to do, I would never tell someone to force yourself to sit and write if you're unhappy with it. Now, if you're just unhappy with a scene or unhappy with a chapter or unhappy with the last paragraph or sentence you wrote, go back and edit. That's fine. Keep going. Don't stop. Keep on going on stuff like that. Don't let one little setback totally ruin your whole possible career. Obviously, you don't want to do something like that, but I also don't believe in just making yourself miserable over something that you originally did because you just loved it and it was fun. Whatever you can do to make sure that it stays fun, that's what you need to do the most. And again, I think it's not necessary to write every day. A lot of people will advise you, no, you have to sit and write this many words a day, or write, every day you have to write something or whatever. Now, do I write every day? No, I just don't. I have a day job that requires a lot of hours outside of the home that I'm working in as a retail manager. And because of that, those days where I have to do double shifts and things like that, and it's a long day, or if it's a stressful day, especially, and I come home and I'm just spent, I'm completely exhausted. There's no way, I have nothing in my inspirational well to put on a page or into a keyboard and write. So for me, writing every day is just not realistic. So that's why I'm perfectly willing to stand out there as someone who's completed 6 books and will tell you in a lot of blog posts, and I always write out a post for my podcast as well. As someone who's done that kind of both fiction and nonfiction writing, I can tell you, is it great if you can write every day? Yes, it absolutely is. If you have the time and the energy and you have the ability to do it, and you can, it's a great habit to set up. It really, really is, as long as you're enjoying it and having fun with it. But if you're in a position like mine or something where you can't, and inspirationally and psychologically and emotionally, it would be too draining. Or if you were to try and write when you're that exhausted and, it just would be like hitting your head against the wall, then I don't advise that. I would say try and write whenever you can, whenever inspiration strikes. I do keep my phone on me as much as I possibly can, and if I can't have my phone on me, like at my job, which I'm not allowed to have my phone, then I will jot down ideas if they occur to me at work so I can follow up with them later. So you can always do it that way. And it is possible to have both a very intense day job like I do and still complete books. Books, I've done books, novellas, ebooks, blogs, and podcasts like I just mentioned. So it is possible to continue a writing career in addition to having a busy life. I think I know other people who are authors and full-time parents and have a full-time job or a part-time job. It is possible. But I would never ask someone to push themselves when they are, especially physically and emotionally exhausted from whether it's parenting or whether it's taking care of an elderly parent, whether it's whatever situation it might be, whether it's a job or whatever that is taking so much out of you, to then try and come at a writing, assignment with inspiration and being able to just flow beauty on the page. It's not going to happen most likely. So I think it's fine not to write every day personally, because it's not always practical for everyone. And I'm just being real. I understand what it's like to live that. And I would never tell someone to do that when it's not possible to do. I do think, though, that you can, if you like to stick with things and you're someone who likes to plan things ahead and keep everything going, it is possible to jot down a couple notes every day. It is possible to outline something probably every day, or start an outline. If you feel like habits are really important for you personally to continue to write and keep things together, then that's what I would advise. If you are very busy and you do have a lot of other stuff going on besides writing, that, but it's still important to you and you want to transition into writing full time, what I would advise is to do the little bit that you can do every day. Do the little notes, do the outline, jot down your ideas, brainstorm, whatever it is, or speak into your phone. A lot of our phones, the vast majority of us have smartphones now. And the vast majority of those have voice memos that you can just speak into your phone if that's the easiest thing to do. Even as you're driving down the road, you can turn on a voice memo and say, don't forget to write about this. Whatever it is that's struck you at the moment, that's the perfect thing to go for. So it is still possible to have a regular, consistent writing habit without actually sitting in a chair and typing out on your laptop or whatever, or your desktop. Pages and pages and 2,000 words or whatever. That's great if you can do that, but not everybody can. So whatever works for you will work, in long term, I believe. And please realize that each form of writing is a unique form. Basically, writing, because I have written both fiction and nonfiction, my stories that are romantic thrillers have all different things in them. They have to be obviously in sequence for the story to make sense. There has to be tension and pacing and conflict and comedy and intensity and, in my case, love scenes and all sorts of stuff. And to come up with a story that makes sense and it ends well and starts well and keeps readers' interest and all that kind of thing is very different from just sitting down and writing a blog post, or sitting down and writing an ebook about how to help people learn more about the law of attraction. Those are very different types of writing, and each one takes a slightly different skill set. So realize that going in, if you're someone who's maybe been writing in a technical way, where you're writing a lot of nonfiction a lot, maybe you blog a lot, maybe you are writing ebooks like I have, or like some of my mentors have, and you want to transition, maybe you really do want to write something else, maybe you want to write fiction, that's wonderful. But please realize that those are two very, very different kinds of writing. And to that end, what I definitely recommend is to learn from the best. I recommend writing books from those who have succeeded. Take what you need from those and leave the rest. If they're telling you things that you don't think you can incorporate into your life, that's okay. What worked for them may not work for you. But if you think you can do that and it makes sense to you, then take what you need from them and go from there. Another thing that really helped me personally is I joined an organization. I joined the Romance Writers of America back in, I believe it was 2011. And that's when the first time I really considered that it would be possible for me to be a serious author. So that joining the organization, they have a publication that comes out that monthly, that's a magazine that has all these writing articles in it. It had all these opportunities for critiques and contests and different things where you can get your writing looked at by published authors, sometimes by best-selling published authors, or by editors, or professional people who do this for the living in the publishing industry. Now, that's not to say that it's the end all be all. It's very subjective, especially fiction is very, very subjective. You can take a piece of work that 5 people in a row look at and say, this is wonderful, this is awesome. If I was rating this on a star system, I'd give it 5 out of 5 stars. And then you'll get one person who gives it a 1 and say, this is boring and this is horrible. It's very, very subjective. So don't take anything personally. And that's not just from a professional writing standpoint, that's also from a personal development standpoint with law of attraction. Don't take anything personally, even though it's very difficult not to, because when you've written, especially fiction, because it's kind of it becomes your baby. It's your story, it's your idea. You're the one who's executing it. You're the one who's telling the story. It is hard to not have hurt feelings when someone comes along, especially a professional person in the publishing industry, and slams it or something. It is difficult. But please remember, that is just their opinion. And it doesn't have to mean anything in the long run, except that they don't like it, which is fine. Not everybody likes romance. Not everybody likes suspense or thrillers. Not everybody likes sci-fi. Not everybody likes literary stuff. Not everybody likes fiction or nonfiction or whatever type it is. That's okay. That's fine. So don't take it personally if someone gives you a negative review or negative feedback. Because most people that I've come across, especially like with RWA, Romance Writers of America, they're very professional for the most part. And they'll give you the advice that you need in what I would term constructive criticism, which is to help you. So if they're giving you advice about, it's like, well, I'm not sure where you're going with this, this page right here. You're talking about this for a long time, and then you jump back to this. That kind of advice can help you if you can sit back with it and not take it personally. When you first read a critique letter or something, sometimes it's hard if they have a lot of things to say that feels like it's negative. Take it with a grain of salt. It might hurt at first. Look at it and then put it away for a week and then look at it again. Sometimes it's a little bit hard to take, but if you can get to where you can take professional, constructive criticism where they really are trying to help you improve as a writer, then you can get there. Anybody can. I've watched lots of people learn how to improve their story, improve their pacing, change a scene around, put it in a different place, put it in a different point of view or whatever, and it totally changes everything and makes it better. Writing, even though it's a solo act where we sit and we are all alone and we write a story, especially people who are published by traditional publishing in particular, but even if you're an indie writer, which I kind of consider myself both, it's great to get feedback from other people, because sometimes being a little bit more collaborative helps you to see outside the box a little bit and to realize, oh, that would be better if I changed from this to this. It's a personal thing, it's a subjective thing, but sometimes when you like it better the other way, then it can be even better. And that goes for even best-selling authors. I know Jo Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter books, wrote originally, I think, in one of her really great novels, The Prisoner of Azkaban, which was the 3rd Harry Potter, she had a character who slapped another character. But in the movie, they had the character Hermione punch the bad boy Draco, and she liked it so much that she wished she could change it, even though her books were already published. So it is a little bit more collaborative. Sometimes someone will come up with another idea, and you like that idea even better. So, take all of that with a grain of salt with your writing. There's resources out there for you, though. I do definitely recommend, especially if you're a fiction writer, joining some of those different organizations. In my case, Romance Writers of America, and I'll put a link in the show notes on that one, was my personal people like Nora Roberts belong to this organization, and a lot of best-selling authors do. Sylvia Day is another one. There's all sorts of authors that are part of that organization. Kristen Higgins, Jill Shalvis, anybody who's a romance fan probably knows those names. So just be aware that you can get help even I've actually taken 2 different classes where Kristen Higgins, a very, very successful and popular best-selling romance author, taught it herself, where I had one-on-one access to her. So they do offer a lot of classes that are free if you join. Usually there's a yearly due membership, but you get all these wonderful things to be a part of that. And what also changed my life is in 2014, I actually went to the national convention because I had finaled in one of the national contests. So it's a big deal to be able to get input, and also to just, writing can be kind of a lonely job sometimes because you're not really interacting with other people as much. And to interact with other people who are doing what you're doing is a very powerful thing. It can be a very uplifting thing. And even though many writers are like me, they're introverts, they're kind of feel happier when they can be by themselves sometimes, and that's what energizes them, is to recharge, is to be alone and be away from crowds and things like that. It is still very, very uplifting to be around people who do what you do successfully. And it makes you feel like, what I'm doing is not just in a vacuum. It can really be a great thing. So I definitely recommend that. There's also the international thriller writers. Whatever genre it is that you write, especially if you write fiction, there is a national group out there for you. And even for nonfiction writers, there's a lot of resources out there for that. Nowadays with the internet, there's a lot of different groups, a lot of different internet groups. So if you kind of live in an area where there's not a lot of other writers, or you're just kind of in an isolated or more rural area or whatever, you can still join things online. There's always resources out there for you. And I do recommend that you take advantage of those resources and see if they can help you. I also, whenever I was talking about the different kinds of writing, and I've never really experienced straight up what most writers call writer's block, where I couldn't write anything at all, but I have struggled where I just didn't feel like writing, or where I wanted to sit and write. Maybe I actually did have time and I didn't sit and write because I didn't feel enthusiastic about what I had thought about before to write. And something that really helped me was to switch it up. If you can write a blog post and go back to your fiction novel and then write something else. What really sparked my inspiration the end of last year, which is 2016, was writing nonfiction for the first time. I'd never attempted it other than just my blog, which I kind of don't even count. But when I started writing nonfiction ebooks with exercises to help people and all sorts of, it was a very different kind of writing. It was almost like I was a teacher again. Doing that really opened me up, inspiration-wise, to make me want to write some more. And so if you are someone who loves writing, but you're kind of hitting a roadblock, I definitely recommend just switching things up, mix it up, change genres. If you're a fiction writer, try nonfiction. If you're nonfiction, try a little fiction. Try poetry, try whatever, to keep your inspiration and your muse active. Also, there's no rule saying that what you write has to be seen. One of my mentors that I've mentioned several times, Ryan Bidoff, talks about writing 1,000 words a day that nobody even needs to see but you. That's, if you have time for that and you can do that, that's awesome. But I think one of the most important things about what he advises on that is that it's just you. It's just for you. You don't have to share that with anyone. This is just practice, basically. This is practice for you to learn how to be a better writer, to be a tighter, cleaner writer, not using a million unnecessary words. You learn how to get to the point of what you're saying, especially if you're writing nonfiction. It's important to know how to get to the point and get to it quickly. So I definitely recommend that as well. And if your writing isn't coming, let's say again, you have the time, but when you sit in front of that keyboard, nothing comes to you. If that's what's happening and you've already sat there for, let's say, 30 minutes and you're still nothing, this is what I personally do in those situations, is I just start typing. Or if you're someone who likes to write with pen and paper or pencil and paper the old-fashioned way, whichever works for you, start, free writing, which is basically just writing whatever pops into your head. sometimes I'm someone who likes to type, so I'm someone who will get on the keyboard. And I literally entitled something meh one time because I couldn't get in the mood to write. I did have the time, but I couldn't get into the mood to write. So I just sat and I just started typing. And at first I just typed about how I was feeling and what was going on in my head. And eventually I was like, oh, you know what would be a great idea? I'll try having my character do this. And I just started typing that. And it was just my notes to myself. But by the time I was done, I was ready to do the next scene in my novel. So if you run into that, I definitely recommend try something like that. Try free writing. You can also just walk away from writing if that's the problem. Maybe you're just too tired to write. Maybe you're too stressed to write. Go take a nap. Go on a walk. Do some laundry. Whatever it is that takes your mind away from it. You'll find most of the time that the ideas that were escaping you before will come to you whenever you get away from the situation sometimes. So sometimes it's the pressure of forcing yourself to write, even if you don't realize that you're forcing yourself, that'll keep you from writing. It's very important, too, to take care of yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, psychologically. Force, again, is not the way to do that. I recommend making sure that you feel the very best that you possibly can, whatever helps you to do that. I also recommend reading, and this is something Stephen King mentions in his very, very famous book on writing. It's the title of his book, and I'm sure you know who Stephen King is if you enjoy writing at all. And he gives wonderful advice, and one of his pieces of advice is to read nonstop. And I definitely agree with that, whatever it is that you're writing. And even if you're just reading other people, if you're a blogger and you want to improve your blogging skills, then you should be reading a lot of blogs. Absolutely. But I also recommend that you read magazine articles, read newspaper articles, read books, read nonfiction books, fiction books, whatever it is, because all of that is a great example to you by someone who's doing this professionally on how you can improve. So reading, there's always time to read, even if it's only 5 or 10 minutes at a time. Waiting in line at the grocery store, you can pull out your phone and read, or your app, or whatever it is that you have, or your book. There's always time. There's more time than we realize. I'll even read sometime if you're in a place like I am where there's a lot of traffic and you end up just deadlocked, stopped sometimes for minutes at a time. Sometimes I'll even glance, whenever we're at a dead stop. Don't read if you're not at a dead stop, but if you are and you're going to be stuck there for a while, read a little bit. But a lot, especially in waiting room times and waiting in doctor's offices and in lines at the grocery store or wherever, there is time to read if we take that time. And the most important thing in the end is for you to believe in yourself. You are a creator by nature. That is just simply who and what you are. All of us are. And especially if you're drawn to writing and other creative pursuits, that's who you are as a person. So just remember that and write what you're passionate about. Some writers will get into the kind of conundrum problem of trying to write to like the market. It's like, oh, these books are popular right now, so I'm going to try and write that. For a while, a lot of people are trying to write erotica because 50 Shades of Grey went really big and global and was a huge deal, and the author became a multi-millionaire overnight, basically, and people tried to write that. Maybe you're not comfortable writing that, and that's fine. Maybe you're not, even interested in writing fiction, but you tried it because you thought, oh, that's the way to make the money is to write that. No, it's really not, because if you hate it and you don't enjoy it, it's never going to work for you. You're never going to be able to write it. Now, if you do, that's great. If something is big all of a sudden and that happens to be what you write, awesome, go for it. But don't force yourself from a money perspective. Don't try and force something just because it's popular at the moment. There's a lot of especially the fiction market goes up and down and changes all the time. And people will come out and say, this genre is dead, or that genre is dead, or this isn't popular right now, or, vampires were really big a while back, but they're kind of quieting down and have been quiet for a while. They'll be back. Whatever you like to write it. And don't worry about selling it to the market, because your love for your writing will show in the passionate way that you write it. And people will respond to that, no matter what it is. So don't give up. Don't forget that what you're writing, as long as you're passionate about it and as long as you have some skill, will draw people to you. And especially if writing is your dream and that's all you want to do and that's what you want to pursue, believe in yourself. Believe you can do it, and you will do it. It's amazing how that works. In 2014, when I put into that contest, I'd been writing for years and getting pretty much nowhere. But I'd finally completed my book in 2014 and submitted it to a contest. And 2 different contests, in my case, were nationally recognized contests. And from those, I ended up getting a publishing contract. So if I can do it, a girl from small town Arkansas, the middle of nowhere, if I can become a published author, then so can you. So have faith in yourself. Be positive. And just know that you can do it, because you are a creator by nature and you are beautiful by nature. And anything you do can be a success. So have faith in that. Have faith in yourself. Have faith in your higher power, whatever you call that. And just go for it. And please check out, if you want more advice about writing and what to do to have joy in your writing, check out my little ebook that's called How to Write Your Way to Joy. I'll put a link in the show notes to that too. It's only $2.99 on Amazon, little ebook. It's probably be able to, it's a very short one, so you can probably, it's like 7,000 words with exercises, so you could probably read it in a day or 2, so it's an easy read. But check that out if you're interested in writing. And thank you so much for tuning into this podcast. I hope you have, as always, a wonderful day. I truly appreciate you taking time out of your day to listen to this show. You can learn more about the topics discussed on this episode at my website, writinginyourjammies.com, and on my Amazon author page, keyword Jeannie Hall. Remember that you are worthy of all good things. You are pure love, light, energy, and stardust. Thanks again.